Hi everyone, I'm Sarah from cats.com, where we're all about cats, and this video is for you if you are overwhelmed with the options of cat feeders and cat fountains on the market. There are so many options to pick from. Petlibro has sent me these 6 feeders and fountains to try out, and these are pretty much exclusively what I've been using with my cat Gordon over the past 6 months. So if you want some help understanding what the differences are between these feeders, what I like and what I don't like about each of them, and which one may be potentially the best fit for you and your cat, then just keep watching. So first off, let's start with the water fountains. And I don't know if this makes me a bad pet parent, but I've actually gone my entire time having Gordon for the past 6 years, and I have never once had a water fountain for him. We always just use the good old fashioned water bowl. Of course, that option does still work, but now that I've had a chance to try out 3 different water fountains, I can safely say I don't think I will really ever be going back, because I found out that is really much better for Gordon, and it's also better for me. I really liked having these water fountains for a few reasons. So number one, it keeps the water a lot fresher, not only because the water is running, but there's also filters in these, so it filters out hair, debris, things like that. And it's also better from my personal experience because I'm able to go much longer between refilling the water. All 3 of these fountains come from the Dockstream fountain line from Petlibro, with this filter being the most simplest, least expensive fountain, to this filter being the fanciest filter with the most bells and whistles, and this one is a little bit in between. So let's start on your left, my right, with the most kind of simple fountain of the 3, but even though this is the most simple, this still does have a lot of great features. This filter is the Dockstream cordless filter. This has a 2.5 liter capacity. So actually both of these 2 fountains, and I'm going to talk about, both have that same 2.5 liter capacity. And this one is great because it is cordless. This is the only of the 3 filters that is cordless, and that is just amazing. So I absolutely love that. I think it makes it it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of where you put the fountain, which I like. It also has this black base here, which I think looks very sleek. That being said, I would say the biggest negative of this particular fountain is you cannot use the Petlibro app. So if you want to be able to get data about how much water your cat is drinking, you will not be able to do that with this particular fountain. So if that is important to you, then you're going to want to look at one of the smart fountains. So we have 2 other fountains. The first one is the Dockstream Smart Fountain, and this one is very similar to the first fountain. However, the main 2 differences is, well, I guess 3 differences. The first difference is it has a different color base here, so it's more of this natural color instead of the black. The second difference is it does have a cord, so this will need to be plugged into the wall, so that may limit it a little bit in terms of where you put it. But the biggest benefit is you can use the Petlibro app. And I've showed the Petlibro app in a few of my other videos before, but it has so many good functionality in terms of monitoring what your cat is eating and drinking. So if you want to be able to monitor what your cat is drinking and how much water they're consuming over time, then this is going to be a really good option for you. It's also only $10 more than the cordless fountain. This one is $69.99 and this one is $79.99. So not too much more expensive, but it does really open up a whole new world in terms of getting in-app notifications and in-app monitoring. So you'll be able to check your cat's water intake, and you'll also be able to get notifications for things like low water levels. So with the cordless water fountain, you really do need to be a bit more vigilant in terms of looking at the fountain. So you can actually see this one does have a low battery indicator right here, whereas this one, it's much more convenient because you don't even have to look at the fountain really. You can just monitor your phone and it will just alert you if it has low water levels or any sort of problem where you need to change the filter or anything like that. However, I would say the biggest downside of this one is if you have multiple cats, it's not going to be able to differentiate which cat is drinking which water. Which brings me to the final fountain. This is the Petlibro, see if I can remember the name of it. It's the Petlibro Dockstream RFID Smart fountain. And this is the fountain of the three that really has the most bells and whistles, because it has everything that the smart fountain has in terms of monitoring and notifications, but it can actually work with multiple cats. And the way it does that is with the collar. So if you've seen the review I did on the RFID one from Petlibro, it works in a very similar way, where this one, basically your cat will wear an RFID collar, and then whenever your cat is drinking water from the fountain, this fountain is picking up all kinds of data about your cat's drinking. So it will be able to send you notifications for things like irregular water drinking behavior, if your cat has started drinking more or less water, which is super helpful if you want to report that information back to your vets. I know for me, whenever my vet asks me, is Gordon drinking more or less water? Has his drinking pattern changed? I can guess instead of say, oh, it's normal, or oh, he's drinking more or less, but in reality, it's hard to really know. Whereas this, I would feel a lot more comfortable actually giving my vet accurate information. So if your cats are struggling with any sort of health issues, or you just want to be proactive in terms of monitoring, then this is probably going to be your best option, especially if you have multiple cats. Oh, and then the final difference is it does actually have a slightly bigger water capacity. So these two are 2.5 liters, and then this final one is 3 liters. So it's perfect if you have multiple cats because there's a little bit more water in here. So now let's move on to the automatic feeders. And as I'm sure you can tell just by looking at these 3 feeders, these are all pretty different. It's not like the fountains that we talked about where they're all basically the same but have slightly different features. All 3 of these feeders are really quite different. These all come from 3 different lines from Petlibro. That being said, there's definitely some similarities between these 3 feeders. All 3 of these feeders have really quite a lot of bells and whistles, and probably my favorite thing about all of them is they all connect to the Petlibro app. So if you want to see me unbox these feeders, talk a lot more about the specs and all of that, then definitely check out those standalone videos. But at a high level, all 3 of these feeders connect to the Petlibro app, which will give you information like low food notifications. It'll give you notifications when your cat has eaten, or at the very least, when food has been dispensed. And also what I like about it is if you have multiple Petlibro feeders like I do, you can just see everything all in one place. So for example, I can go to the Petlibro app and see how much water Gordon's drinking. I can also see how much food he's eating if it's coming from like the RFID 1 feeder. So I like having just everything all in one place. It's also very easy to configure, so I can just set up his meal schedule and everything like that right from Petlibro app. Diving into the details, let's start with the Polar Wet Food Feeder. And again, I've done a whole standalone review of this particular feeder, so check that out if you want a lot more details. But this feeder is $129.99, and what's really unique and special about this feeder is it stores wet food. So if you want to feed your cat more of a varied diet and you want to give them the hydration and the health benefits of wet food, the Polar Wet Food Feeder could be a really great option for you. Basically how this works is it's like a little mini refrigerator, so it actually keeps the food cold until it's time for your cat to eat. And then when it's time for your cat to eat, the tray, they can store up to 3 meals, will rotate, and then there's a little window that will open up where your cat can eat their meal. That being said, there are a few just considerations to keep in mind. So this can only store 3 meals, and you can only store it for up to 72 hours in this feeder. So if you're someone who wants to be able to really like set it and forget it and set this feeder and not check on it for weeks or months at a time, then this is not going to be the feeder for you, because you still will need to actively change out the tray and the meals in here. Also, the food does come out a little bit cold because, as I said, it is refrigerated. So I know for Gordon, he did have a little bit of a shock, I think, the first time he tried food from this feeder. So definitely keep that in mind if your cat's, maybe sensitive to that. Another thing to keep in mind is there is a 1-hour window on the feeding time. So if your cat is a grazer where they spend hours eating their meal, then again, this may not be the best option, just because just to keep the food fresh, it will only open the window for 1 hour at a time. And then finally, if you have multiple cats, this feeder doesn't have quite the same amount of bells and whistles for dealing with multiple cats as some of the things we'll talk about in these next 2 feeders. So if you have multiple cats, then let's move on and I'll talk about some of the other options. So now let's move on to the Granary Camera Feeder. I loved this feeder. Basically, say the big selling point of this one is the camera, as the name suggests. So if you want to be able to see your cat's little face when they are eating their meals, then this is the feeder that I think you should look into. So again, this is an automatic feeder. You can schedule up to 6 meals per day. It will store up to 5 liters of dry food. So you can really get quite a bit of food in here. I was a little bit nervous about the camera. I thought it would be like really grainy quality. I was worried that it wouldn't actually pick up when Gordon was eating, but neither of those things have been true. So this does have a 1080p camera. It also has a 45-degree angle lens. So you can really see like beyond what is just immediately happening at the feeder. So I do really appreciate that. And basically how it works is you can just log on to the Petlibro app and just monitor in real time what's going on from this camera at any point. So I liked that it doesn't just film when your cat is moving around. So if you're busy at work or something and you want to be able to reference the videos later, there's basically 2 options. So you can just purchase an SD card, which you could just get, you know, on Amazon or something, and just put this in the feeder and do it that way. The downside of that is you will need to physically, you know, retrieve the SD card from the feeder in order to watch the videos. So if you're trying to do it remotely, that may not be a good option. That being said, there's not going to be an ongoing cost. The other option that Petlibro offers is a video cloud. This is what I tried. And they have 2 different versions of the video cloud. They have a standard option or a more premium option. Really the only difference is the standard option only stores the videos for 7 days, and then the more premium option stores the videos for 30 days. So it really just depends on how long you want to be able to watch the videos. And so with the video cloud, it will pick up whenever there is noise or motion in the area. So if it thinks that your cat may be eating from the feeder, it will start recording, and then it will record a little video clip, you know, of whatever's happening, and then you can watch that later. It will also send you a real-time notification when that's happening. I will say the notifications they will pick up everything. I was worried about it not picking up enough information, but it picks up literally any sound or motion in the area, to the point where honestly, probably when my husband's home, like 9 times out of 10, the notifications I get are not actually Gordon eating from the feeder, but it's other just things happening in the room. So it'll be notifications of Gordon like walking past the feeder, or my husband walking past the feeder, or my husband getting a pan out of the cupboard or something. So it definitely picks up a lot. Personally, I like this. I like being able to see more of what's going on versus less, but just know that may be a negative for you if you don't want to get a lot of notifications that don't end up, you know, being anything. So, you know, just keep that in mind, that it is a very sensitive camera. If you think that may bother you, then I would recommend putting this feeder maybe in a low traffic area of your home where it's unlikely to set the camera off when your cat is not actually eating. Okay, and now let's get into the final feeder for today's discussion. This is the RFID 1 feeder. And again, I've done a whole standalone review of this one, so definitely check that out if you want more details. But really, this feeder is meant for multi-cat households. So just like the DocStream Smart RFID feeder, this one uses RFID technology. So basically it syncs your cat's RFID collar that comes with the feeder with the feeder itself, and it will only open for the cat that it is supposed to. So if you have problems with cats stealing food, then this is definitely a feeder that you're going to want to consider, because that's what this whole thing was designed for. It is literally designed for multi-cat households, especially those that steal each other's food. So love that. Now this one is $149.99, so it is the most expensive of these feeders. And the other thing to keep in mind is that you will most likely need to buy multiple of these feeders if you have multiple cats, because the way it works is each feeder only syncs with one individual cat. So if you have multiple cats, you will need multiple feeders. So keep that in mind in terms of the cost. Now, in terms of the storage capacity, again, this one is a dry food feeder, and it has 3 liters of storage capacity versus 5 liters. So it is a little bit smaller in terms of the amount of food that can fit in here. That being said, as I've mentioned, you will need multiple feeders. So it really should be totally fine, because you are separating the food capacity over multiple feeders. The feeder opens up when it's supposed to, it closes when it's supposed to, which is Of course, critical because you don't want your cat to starve because the feeder doesn't open up. So I'm really glad to say that it does work as expected. That being said, there are just a few considerations that may be negatives for you about this feeder. So again, your cat will need to wear this RFID collar if you plan to use this feeder. So it does not work with things like microchips. I know that's like a wish list item for a lot of people, but that's not quite available with this feeder yet. Also, I will say I have used this feeder quite a bit with Gordon using the collar, and the collar has gotten a little bit frayed over time. So keep in mind you may need to replace this collar over time. For us, I've just decided to not use the collar anymore with this feeder because again, we only have a Gordon in this household. So there is an option just to have the door to be always open, which I think is perfect for a single cat household. So this is what we do. So I don't need to worry about the collar anymore. But if you have multiple cats, you will need the collar to get it to work. And then I know some people are also concerned about the collar for the safety risks. I will say though, Petlibro does have a safety mechanism in place with this collar. So it is an easy release collar, so it does release under pressure. So hopefully that does relieve some concerns that you may have about this feeder. The only other small sort of nitpicky thing I have noticed about this feeder is it is a little bit squeaky when Gordon is eating. So it is a little bit noisy when he's actually eating. So that can be slightly annoying, but otherwise it works exactly as it's supposed to. So absolutely love this one as well. And that's it for today's video. As promised, let me share my favorite cat fountain and feeder from this lineup. So I do love all of these for different reasons. I think they all have their different advantages and disadvantages, but I love the cordless fountain. I think there's just something so sleek and elegant about having a fountain just fountaining water with no cord. I love it. And I just love not having to use a plug because I have very limited outlets on my wall. So I love the cordless fountain. And then in terms of the feeder, this again is a really hard choice because they're all good for different reasons, but the camera feeder has to be my favorite because I've become addicted to watching the camera. I love seeing Gordon eat his meals. And especially for me, I travel quite a bit. So oftentimes I'm not with Gordon for his meal time. So I love being able to see him and just get that sign of life that he's okay, he's moved around, he's eating, he's doing good. So I love the camera feeder. So those would be my personal favorites, but let me know in the comments which one you think would be your favorite and which one you would like to try out from this lineup. And also let me know if there's any other feeders you would like me to review on this channel. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.